Hey guys, the Slayer Dre here, and wow, I can't believe this happened again. And honestly, it does seem like Microsoft is trying to improve the Xbox platform. They are just clueless how to do so. There are a number of positive pro consumer moves that they have made over the past few years, and also going into Xbox Series X. So I was hoping that they would be able to come out with some good looking games, but let's get into it. So, a few months ago, Microsoft had a live stream showing off third party games that would be on the Series X, except they forgot to put gameplay in their gameplay trailers. It ended up being pre rendered trailers and showed next to nothing about the actual games. It does seem like now most people want to see actual gameplay since trailers tell you nothing about the game. I mean, it's something I've gone on over time and time again. It needs to change. So this time around, I assumed they would actually show some real gameplay since this is the showcase for their official Xbox games. In their defense, they did show some gameplay for one game. It's hard to believe how tone deaf they can be since, like I said earlier, they do seem to be making some pro consumer moves, although they feel perfectly fine leaving horrible microtransactions into some of their games. But like I said, overall they do seem to be making positive changes. The biggest problem for Xbox has been the lack of enticing exclusives, and this is why Sony has dominated them this generation. Microsoft went on a big spending spree, acquiring quite a few studios over the last year, and I do think it was a good move overall, but the problem is it takes a very long time to make a good game. It might take even longer to really cultivate those studios and make them into something resembling the amazing studios Sony has, like Sony Santa Monica or Sucker Punch. Ones that have been with Sony for years and done tons of exclusives. That level of performance doesn't just happen overnight. That being said, I really didn't think it was going to be this bad. Yes, there were some games that looked promising, but next to no gameplay was shown. So, how is anyone supposed to know if the games will be good or not? Or on a more basic level, what the hell will even these games even be about? I mean, seriously, the trailers tell you nothing in some cases. Before I go on a rant for too long, let's get into this and try and move through it quicker than usual because just not much was shown off and there's nothing I can say about it. So, Microsoft blew its proverbial wad at the very beginning by showing off Halo Infinite. So, props to Microsoft. This is the one game they actually did show off gameplay for, but they probably shouldn't have. I can't think of any FPS I've played that was as boring as Halo Infinite looks. It looked like a really poor cross between Doom 2016 and Destiny 2. Like, kind of like a low end, double A game, low end mid tier game. Digital Foundry did a really good video. So graphically, it looks not great. They said it was because of the lighting. Like I said, I'll talk about it. Graphics don't make everything, but it just did not look like even a current gen game. The gameplay looks sluggish. The level design was terrible. It will be cross gen, and it is running at 4K 60. But even still, the graphics shouldn't be this bad. I know I've said 1,000 times graphics don't matter, and they don't, but Microsoft has constantly made such a huge deal about the power of the Xbox Series X, you'd think they would actually want to show it off. If this isn't all your marketing material, you better make sure you can actually deliver on what you're talking about. If I were in control of Microsoft, I would take Halo away from 343 and find another studio to take it over, with even maybe a soft reboot, or maybe even at this point a hard reboot. This is a game I would absolutely be interested in playing on PC with the Game Pass, but it looks so boring. I'm not going to bother. And I've never really played the Halo games. I mean, I've played like multiplayer with friends, but it's a franchise I've always wanted to get into, and this is not enticing me to get into it. I'm probably going to play the Master Chief Collection at some point, but I'm not interested in playing Halo Infinite at this point. Moving along, they showed off Forza Motorsport next, which I'm personally am looking forward to. If you do care about graphics, yes, it didn't look quite as good as Gran Turismo 7, but it is running at 60 FPS, which is far more important in a driving game over graphic fidelity. The pretty graphics are nice, but you need at least 60 FPS, and especially in a racing game. Gran Turismo has been stuck at 30 FPS for a few generations. We obviously don't. I know Digital Foundry did say that some games in the PlayStation event a few weeks ago were running at 30 FPS. I don't know if Gran Turismo was one of them, but I would assume it probably is. This is a really weird console war. Microsoft is doing everything right except the most important thing, having good games, while Sony is doing everything wrong, but they have the amazing exclusives to fall back on, and they'll win because of that. And I mean, that is the most important thing. Even if they do everything else completely wrong, if you have the good games, you're gonna win. I really wish Sony had better leadership, so we would get games at a playable frame rate on the PS5 along with more pro-consumer practices, but unfortunately that's not going to happen. They pushed out a lot of the leadership that seems to actually care about gaming. The current leadership seems to be very money driven, which, you know, you can make money by making good games. You don't have to screw over everyone else in the process. But unfortunately, most executives don't see it that way. Honestly, neither next-gen gaming system looks overly appealing at this point, and I really only buy the PS5 so I can play older games at playable frame rates instead of sub 30 FPS. Anyways, as far as Forza Motorsport goes, I've been getting into racing games, so I am definitely interested, but they didn't show off anything about the game, so I have no idea if it's for me or not. It's really head-scratching choices on Microsoft's part. Next, they showed off a game that Rare has been working on called Everwild. The artwork looks gorgeous, but no gameplay was shown, so I have no idea what the game is about. They said some really generic, general statements about it that you could probably slap tag on to any game, and it doesn't tell you anything. One of the developers talked about the game after, but literally, she said nothing about actual details about the game. So I'm struggling to see what the point is of even including it in the showcase. After that, they went into a new game by Don't Nod, the makers of Life is Strange. A game I actually did enjoy, even though I don't typically enjoy those, story games. The new game is also an interactive story called Tell Me Why. Graphically, it looks very last gen, and since they constantly talked about the power of the Xbox Series X in the showcase, it is really strange to not show off any games that actually took advantage of the box. And with these story games, there's not much in the way of gameplay, so you can make them look pretty and run at 30 FPS, and it doesn't really make too much of a difference. Yes, 60 FPS is better, but it's not like you need to have Twitch jerk reactions to events in the game, so this is one of those games you can go crazy with the graphics, really, and as long as it's running at 30 FPS, it doesn't make too much of a difference. But as far as Tell Me Why goes, it looks very similar to Life is Strange, so if you enjoyed that game, you'll probably like this one. Moon Studios then showed off a new version of Ori and the Will of the Wisps, where you can play the game at 120 frames per second at max settings, which is great. That's so great. I mean, most people probably don't have TVs that go that high, but if you have a high refresh rate monitor, you can plug the box in, that's awesome. I'd love to see that. And we are seeing more high refresh rate TVs coming out, so I think that they are going to be more common as the years go on. So, good move there. I still need to finish the first game, but this would be really fun to play at the high frames per second, especially since I guess it's a pretty intense platformer from what I've heard, so the high frame rate is really good for the games like that. Moving on, they showed off a DLC trailer for the very disappointing Outer Worlds. The main game was unfinished crap, and I have zero expectations for this DLC, so I'm not even going to bother with it. I'm wondering if maybe they'll use up all that just random unfinished stuff, and I mean, it basically seems like they didn't finish the game and they're selling it back to us as DLC. It's sad. It's such a shame how far Obsidian has fallen, but it's been about a decade since they've made anything good, so it's safe to say the studio is basically dead at this point. It sucks, Obsidian showed off 2 more games. Each one looked worse than the last. There's a Honey, I Shrunk the Kids simulator called Grounded that is a generic crafting survival looking game, and a knockoff Skyrim game called Avowed. I have no idea what they're thinking. One of the main persisting complaints about Skyrim is the combat. Why they would think it's a good idea to make a game with the same combat is There is no explanation. I have no idea what they're thinking. Next to nothing was shown other than it's a first person melee magic game, which is impossible almost to pull off for even a good studio, let alone one that is basically bottom of the barrel for Obsidian at this point. They seem desperate just to be a Bethesda knockoff studio, and why you would want to be a Bethesda knockoff studio these days is, again, I have no explanation for that. And honestly, it's just pathetic at this point. They made some incredible games in the past that I've spent countless hours enjoying. It really gives me no joy to see them fall this far. It sucks. I really wish they could go back to being the great game studio they once were. After that, they followed it up with yet another story-based adventure game that showed so little, I'm not even sure if the game had basic animations in it or not, or if you glitched forward. I have no idea. I'm not even going to bother with it since they couldn't be bothered to show us anything meaningful about the game. For whatever reason, after that, they decided to show us the locations that they are using for the next Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, but didn't show or tell us anything about the game other than it will be based on Iceland. Whoever threw this showcase together should be fired. It's mind-boggling how a major multi-billion-dollar company can be so utterly tone-deaf and have no idea what it's doing. Seriously, Microsoft, hire me and I will make sure you beat Sony next gen. You need the help. Seriously, I'm available. Probably not even that expensive. I'm going to somewhat wrap it up at this point. There was little to nothing shown in terms of gameplay for the remainder of the showcase, but I'll briefly just talk about them because there's some potential that they could be interesting, but, I really need to see gameplay until I can say that. Psychonauts 2 was shown off. I mean, we've seen some before. It's already been announced, obviously, and delayed, I think, maybe twice at this point. I never played the first, and the trailer did not make me interested in the second one to the point where I am not even going to bother even looking into it at all. I don't know who put the trailer together, but it's so bad, I don't know what they were thinking. Moving along, they announced Stalker 2, which I've heard the first one is good, and if any gameplay is ever shown about the second one, I have the potential to becoming interested, They did show some of the Medium. At this point, not really interested, but again, not too much was shown, so it's impossible to decide. There are a few other reveals, but honestly nothing of note, so we can just move to the last big, I guess, announcement, if you want to call it that. Fable 4 got announced. I have never played the games, but I do know they have a horrific reputation about lying to fans about features, which is something I just can't respect, and I really don't approve of. It's just, why? So I hope they learned their lesson. They probably haven't. No gameplay was shown. It was just a little generic trailer. No idea what it will be like. I think it would have been a smarter move to maybe announce remastering the first 3 games in a collection and putting it on PC so people could try it out. I'm not going to be playing like the 4th game in the series. I mean, unless they maybe it's a hard reboot. Again, they didn't say anything about it. But again, I've heard, it seems like some people love the first 3 games, but it seems like the majority of people say they're bad games. I have no idea. Until I play them, I can't, really decide for myself. So again, Microsoft had a train wreck of a presentation, and it's really a shame. They do seem like they are pushing towards more consumer-friendly practices between smart delivery, not pushing people to get the new console, and the Game Pass. These are all great things. They still have a huge microtransaction issue, and this doesn't get them off the hook for that. But at least there's some positive change. The problem is that they are just completely lost when it comes to properly marketing these changes to the public, and when it comes to just being able to determine what games people want to play. It's probably going to take some time before they can start competing with Sony in, the exclusives department, with, cultivating all these new studios, but I really wish they would figure out things faster. If they are competitive, then it pushes each side to make better games, and we, the customers, win. But if Microsoft can't make great games like Sony does, then Sony will get lazy again, which is already happening, and we will see them start cutting back in quality because they don't have to try hard. They're not going to put that extra effort in. They're going to cut out parts of games and sell them back to us as DLC. They're going to add in more microtransactions. They don't need to make those great games because there's no competition, or they won't make them as good as they could possibly be. Being this negative isn't enjoyable, but unfortunately it's reality, and it sucks, I know. I want gaming to get better. It's something I love. I've seen music was my number one passion, and I saw it die a horrific death before my eyes as I grew up, and its corpse is being dragged along at this point, and it's disgusting. I don't want to see that happen to gaming. That's why we have to speak out about all the negative things that the gaming companies are doing, even if it's unpleasant and it's not fun to talk about, and gaming's supposed to be a fun, enjoyable hobby. They're trying to destroy it, and it sucks. You know, there's other things to do in life, and this is not my only hobby, but I do really like it, and I don't want it to see it go away, or at least all the enjoyable parts of it go away. So right now, I'm going to be working on some more positive videos. Right now, I'm working on my way through Ghost of Tsushima, which I am enjoying, but I'm going for the Platinum Trophy, and it is a very long game. Like, way longer than I thought it was going to be. I might actually even 100% it, which you don't technically have to do for the Platinum, but I do like doing everything the game has to offer. I feel like it will make me be able to give a better review to people. Instead of just playing it for a few hours and giving my impressions, I want to actually play through the entirety of the game so I can really, I will be able to do a much better review from doing that. I'm also thinking of doing some type of separate review of how much fun it is to get the Platinum in Ghost of Tsushima. So make sure you're subscribed to see that as soon as it comes out. Thanks for listening and watching. If you've made it this far, I really appreciate it, and I will see you all in the next video.